Are you waiving your right to a speedy preliminary hearing and agreeing that that hearing can be held outside the 14-day period?
Yes.
A grand jury indicts Bryan Kohberger in the murders of 4 University of Idaho students, taking his case to a higher court and the next phase. I'm Angenette Levy, and thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime. A Latah County grand jury has indicted Bryan Kohberger in the murders of Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin at their home off campus in November of 2022. The 4 were stabbed to death in an off-campus home, some as they slept. Kernodle's father told a news outlet in Arizona that she had defensive wounds after fighting her attacker. A former defense attorney of Kohberger's had told me that he hopes to be exonerated. The former Washington State University PhD student was supposed to be in court in Moscow on June 26th for a week-long preliminary hearing. That would have given his attorneys an opportunity to challenge the evidence in the case, specifically DNA evidence police claim links him to the crime. Going to a grand jury means that hearing won't happen, since a grand jury has determined there is probable cause that Kohberger committed the crimes. The preliminary hearing would have likely done the same thing. The bar for probable cause is low. Josh Ritter is a defense attorney in California. Josh, what do you make of this move by the prosecution to go to the grand jury to seek an indictment, making the need for a preliminary hearing totally unnecessary?
As a former prosecutor, this is no shock to me at all. I think a lot of people saw this one coming. In a case of this complexity and of this magnitude, you can't imagine why they would want to put a prelim on. They can do a grand jury almost at their leisure. They can call in witnesses, put it over for a couple of days, call a few more witnesses, as long as that grand jury is still convened. In a preliminary hearing, they have to do it all at once. And the other advantage that the prosecution has is that the defense is not present. Now, that means that the prosecutor wears 2 hats to some extent and has to present some evidence that's exculpatory, but not to the extent that you would see in a preliminary hearing, where each witness would be subject to cross-examination and, perhaps even the calling of witnesses on the part of the defense.
Josh, this puts the defense at a disadvantage because they would have been permitted to question the state's witnesses and possibly glean information through cross-examination that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to do or to get.
Yeah, it's hard to not see it any other way. They will still get transcripts. They'll still get the testimony of what was taken during the grand jury, but it would not be, as you pointed out, subjected to rigorous cross-examination where they could pin each of the prosecution's witnesses to a particular narrative and hold them to that for when this eventually goes to trial. But now all they're left with is the testimony at the grand jury hearing, which is helpful, but not nearly as helpful as a preliminary hearing would have been for the defense.
So what's the next step then?
Well, now we're essentially what we would have been post-prelim. So that date that we had set for June is now off calendar, and they're now in the pretrial process. So we'll probably see this set a few times for pretrial conferences as defense and prosecution get together to make sure that everyone's exchanged discovery. I don't know if there's going to be any plea negotiations during all of this time, because this is likely going to be a life without parole or even death penalty case. So I can't see that really playing a part in all of this. But that was during this period of pretrial is when usually those discussions would take place. And then the next big event we're going to have is the trial itself.
Well, Josh, thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Bryan Kohberger will be arraigned on Monday morning in Latah County. At that time, he will most certainly enter a not guilty plea to the charges. Also on Monday, there's a scheduling conference over the gag order that was issued by Judge Megan Marshall in this case. Both the defense and the prosecution agreed to this gag order, but media outlets, including Law&Crime, have sued to amend the gag order, arguing that it's had a chilling effect on the ability to report on this case. Kaylee Gonsalves' family and their attorney are also a part of the effort to fight it. For Law&Crime, I'm Angenette Levy.